All right, the question today is, can I rent my timeshare? Whether you've heard it from a timeshare salesman in a Facebook group or on social media, you may be wondering, can I really rent my timeshare? Because it would be great if you could rent a portion of your weeks or points to generate some rental income and have your timeshare basically pay for itself, wouldn't it? And the truth is, some timeshares have rules against renting, while others encourage it. So, in today's video, I want to show you exactly how to find out if you own a rentable timeshare or not. So, it comes down to this one question. And if the answer is yes, then you do have a rentable timeshare. Now, it's important to ask the question exactly like this, so get a pen and paper and write this down. I'll go over the reasons why it's critical to phrase the question like this in just a minute, but let's start with the one question for now. Okay, here it is. If I make a reservation in my name, and then later on, if I'm not able to go, can I transfer it to a friend so that they can check in without me being there? Okay, and if the answer to that question is yes, then you can rent your timeshare. But now, that question seems really straightforward, doesn't it? But you know what the biggest mistake is that I hear timeshare owners make when they're asking the question? Is they modify it and they say it like this instead. They ask, if I make a reservation, can I add a guest later on? Now, what's wrong with this question? Well, depending on who you're talking to, the word guest will have different meanings, and you may get the wrong answer to the question, which can lead to losing your points, or worse, the guests traveling all the way to the resort and then not being able to check in. Disaster, right? So, to avoid these pitfalls, we need to do a quick vocabulary lesson and start by defining the word guest. Now, you would think that the meaning of the word guest would be pretty straightforward, right? But when it comes to timeshares, they love to make things complicated. And when renting a timeshare, we have to be extremely clear on definitions so that we don't make critical mistakes. And there are two different definitions of the word guest when it comes to renting a timeshare, depending on context. Okay, so let's start with the wrong one. I'll give you a quick scenario. So, for example, let's say that you plan to go on a trip and you've made a reservation at your resort in your name as the timeshare owner, and the room holds a total of 4 guests. Okay, so the timeshare may ask you who your guests are. Now, the timeshare is assuming that you will not only be the one checking in, but you're also going to be bringing, 3 friends or up to 3 friends to stay with you. So in this scenario, you are the primary guest on the reservation, which means you'll be checking in first. Then when the front desk asks your name, it's going to come up on their system. And then the front desk will ask you to show matching ID to be sure that it's you. And you'll put your credit card on file for any incidental charges during your stay. And then the names of the other people in your group will just be added as your guests who are staying with you. Okay? So with this definition in mind, listen to that wrong question again. If I ask, if I make a reservation in my name, can I add a guest later? What do you think the timeshare is going to answer? They'll probably say yes, right? Because they'll assume that you're going to be the primary guest, and of course you can bring other guests with you. And no, you don't have to add their names when you make the reservation, but you can add them later on, once their plans are certain. So can you see why rephrasing the one question the wrong way by asking, if I make a reservation, can I add a guest later on? I will get the answer yes from the timeshare, but this isn't the right way to phrase the question if you don't want to be the one to check in. Because the best part about renting your timeshare is that you can manage it remotely without going to your resort. We want to be very clear about what the timeshare's rules allow so that we can identify the rentable programs that we have access to. So let's go on to the second definition of the word guest that the timeshare uses, that is the right one. So for rental purposes, in this scenario, we're going to assume that you plan to go on a trip and you've made a reservation at your resort in your name as the timeshare owner. But then your plans change, and suddenly you're not able to go on that trip. Now, in this case, you have a few options. So, one, you can cancel the reservation. That's plan A. Plan B, you can keep the reservation and just simply let it go to waste. Or plan C, if you can find a friend who can go in your place, then all you have to do is let the timeshare know that that person will be checking in instead of you. Okay, so in that case, your name is no longer on the reservation. Your friend is the primary guest, which means they can check in without you being there. And when the front desk asks for their name, it will come up on their system. And then all they have to do is show matching ID and they're in. Okay? And so your friend's going to put their credit card on file for any incidental charges during their stay. And then the names of the other people that may be traveling in their group can be added at check-in as the other guests who are staying with them. Okay? So now this is the right definition of a guest that is the key to opening up the possibility to rent a timeshare. Okay, so with those two scenarios, I'm hoping you can see the nuances and the differences when you're using the word guest in context, and the one that we're looking for when we're asking this question to find out if our timeshare is rentable. These are the clues that you're watching for so that you'll know if it is definitely rentable or not. Okay? Okay, so that's why we want to phrase the question the right way by asking, if I make a reservation in my name, and then later on, if I'm not able to go, can I transfer it to a friend so that they can check in without me being there? So that way, when you ask that question that way, the person on the other end at the timeshare answering the question will be very clear on the distinction, and they will be able to answer yes or no. And then if the answer is yes, then you know you can transfer the reservation either for free or, if you want to, for a fee. Okay? Okay, now the next question is, once you've established that you do have a rentable timeshare, how do you go about transferring that reservation out of your name and into their name? All right, so let's go through the steps. So now, sometimes you're simply going to log into your timeshare account and modify the existing reservation. And when you find the reservation and it says, would you like to modify it? You just say, yes, I'd like to take my name off. And you just type their name in that space where your name was, and you're good to go. Okay, that's one way it can happen. So these are different mechanisms that the timeshares use. Sometimes the timeshares use a form, and it's called a guest certificate. So if that's what they're using, then all you do is you fill in their guest certificate, and you put in your friend's information, and that way they can officially become the primary guest. All right. The third way is sometimes the timeshares will use that guest certificate and charge a small fee. So if that's the case, that's fine. Not a deal breaker. Just ask for a little extra compensation. Okay. And in some cases, maybe you don't have a login to your account, so you may have to just make a phone call during business hours to the concierge and ask them to help you make that switch. Okay? So those are the main ways that it usually happens, and I just wanted to give you that so you know what to look for. So once you've determined which mechanism the timeshare uses, you're good to go and you're all set. Okay, so next, now that you know how to speak a little of the timeshare's language and what you're looking for, now you're ready to go out and find the answer to the one question. So who are you going to call, right? Well, you have two options. First of all, you can just call the timeshare company and ask the concierge that question and say, if I make a reservation in my name, and then later on, if I'm not able to go, can I transfer it to a friend so they can check in without me being there? Then wait for answer, right? Or there's another way we can do it. So if you want to use your powers of deduction, all you do is log into your account on the timeshare's website and you do a test reservation. Okay? So now, if you can rent your timeshare, you're going to see a place to change the name of the primary guest to anyone you want. And then there's another way to verify, because I like to trust but verify. So if I'm making the reservation, I see that it doesn't have to be in my name, that I can put anyone's name in there. Now I know I can rent that. But I also want to verify by continuing on through that process of making the reservation and looking for the fine print, okay? So you can further verify the rentability by reading the fine print in the terms and conditions. And as long as it doesn't prohibit transferring the reservation to someone else, then you can rent it. All right, you're good to go. Great. Okay, so now you know the right question to ask to find out if you can rent your timeshare. And you know who to ask to find the answer to that burning question. And once you know the answer, you know how to go about adding the guest to the reservation. All right, so I want to leave you with that so that you can go do your homework. And I also want you to know that the reason why you have this ability to rent your timeshare is because the timeshare company understands that you may not always be able to use your timeshare every year. I mean, it's a fact that, sometimes life gets busy and plans can change. And there's no point in letting your weeks or points go to waste, especially since you've already paid for them, right? In fact, being able to transfer a reservation is one of the main benefits of owning a timeshare. And the timeshares understand that in those seasons where maybe you don't use your timeshare as much, then you should be able to find somebody else who can, who's willing to pay you a fair price so that you can offset the cost of your maintenance fees. Does that make sense? Great. All right. So once you know that you can rent your timeshare, then I welcome you to come back and watch my free training video. It's what every timeshare owner needs to know before attempting to rent their timeshare on the internet. I recommend you take 30 minutes to just watch it so that you can set yourself up for success. You can click the link in the show notes below to get instant access to it now. This is Sue Oyuela, wishing you all the best in timeshare rental success. Bye for now.